Hello everyone, I am Bradley Sward, Associate Professor of Computer and Information Science at the College of DuPage in Glen Ellen, Illinois. This video is going to take a look at a lot of little topics here when it comes to top-down or three-quarter, top-down or half-down, depending on your perspective, adventure games. We're going to look at NPCs, we're going to look at player movement, we're going to look at animations, we're going to set up a whole ton of little things. So I promise you that this time will not go wasted. So let's get right to it. I do not have anything set up. This is a brand new setup here that I'm going to start with. And so that there's nothing here. The only thing that comes with is the first room that comes for free. And I'm going to change this to 720p resolution. And you're free to make, this time around, make it whatever you want. I just stick to 720p so that I can have this on the screen. I don't have to worry about other things. I would be making 1080p games if I was doing things my way, but just for demonstration's sake, 720p is a good way to go. So I'm going to start with programmer graphics. So I am going to start with a Sprite, and I'm going to make everything multiples of 40 because 40s work inside of 720p or 1080p resolution. I don't have to worry about things being wonky or anything like that. So this is going to be my player character. I'm just going to make it just a blue square for the moment. And I promise you in this video I will be changing this out eventually. And we'll be changing things around. So just kind of go with it for now. I'll call this the player sprite. And then I'm just going to basically duplicate this for, where's duplicate? There it is. And I'm going to use it for a wall. So I got two things going for me. I got a player and I got a wall. And I'm just going to recolor this, of course, go in here, make sure I'm in the right sprite when I go to do this. And I'll make this a boring dark gray. That isn't something that isn't black. Okay, so there we go. I've got my player, I've got my wall when it comes to sprites. And then I could also go ahead and set up the fact that it's 11:11. 1 second here, timer. Okay, so I'm going to set up a object that handles the player and use the player sprite, obviously. There it is, and then create a wall sprite or wall object. I'm still not used to having objects above sprites on the list here. Fair enough. I don't care enough to change anything right now. Okay, so there's my player, there's my wall, and just for the sake of, since I'm thinking about it now, just so you don't have to go back and change everything later on, you go into your player, you go into your centering or your origin point. I'm going to use, I'll talk about it later, I'll use bottom center for each object in our scene. That is the only big thing that has to change right now. Make sure the collision masks are good because GameMaker has a habit in version 2.3 here of not, see, there you go, 0, 0. Because I changed something over here, it changes the collision mask, which is very frustrating because it should come along for free. And so I want manual rectangle and I got to go in and do it myself. That's frustrating. But if I duplicate, if I create it fresh, it doesn't have that same issue. Oh well, such is life. Okay, so my player sprite is perfectly aligned here. My wall sprite is perfectly set up for the collision mask. And now I'm ready to go into my room and set everything up. So I'm just going to throw my player in there. Oh, I'm going to make sure, change my grid settings to be 40 by 40 so that everything's going to come in there nicely. Oops. Oh, and because of the centering. And okay, let's do this. Let's do this one more time here. Let's just make this 20. No. Let's make the player and the wall, instead of being bottom center, let's make it left center. I know I'm trying to do a million things here. Where is bottom left? Bottom left. Okay, and wall bottom left as well. And I'm trying to balance a cool little three-quarter top-down thing we're going to do in a little bit versus how much time should I spend putting these objects in a room? It should not be a lot of time, right? So here's my main object, and then I'm going to put my wall, and you can hold down Alt, of course, right, and start dragging. Oops. Yeah, it changes. It makes it hard just because of the way I made my sprites centered, and I can go ahead and delete this. And for now, as long as I have some sprites in my room, This is a pain in the, oh well. It's only a pain in the butt vertically or horizontally. And we're going to change this up in a little bit anyway, so it's just I'm just going ahead and setting all this up, deleting everything else out. Select. There we go. And so if I run my game, hopefully now I see everything like I'm supposed to. There I go. There I am. There's my 720p resolution. I can just go ahead and delete this thing out. So let me put some other walls, just random walls in this. Put some other random stuff in here. So when the character walks around, we'll be able to try out some other stuff. Okay. So now let's do some movement. So again, I do things differently than a lot of other people. And like a lot of other people, when they talk about the things they do differently, they have good reasons behind it. And I have more control if I use move context solid functions than if I just trust GameMaker to handle collision detection, collision response, and all of that stuff. And again, maybe it's just because I never went ahead and learned the exact GameMaker way of doing things. But even so, it's counterintuitive to me and probably many other people how the collision system works in GameMaker. So I'm going to make all the walls solid because I'm going to be using move context solid functions to do this job. And so the player movement, instead of using events for all of this, because if I can move 4 different directions, up, down, left, and right, or I guess think of it 8 different ways, 8 different directions, that it's going to be tricky to figure out based on just keyboard commands what's going on, and it's not easy just if this is pressed and that's pressed. So I'm just going to go ahead and put this all in a step event. I'm going to write my own code to handle this. And so for right now, and again, this is just, we're going to start out simple, then explain to you why we have to do things a little more complicated to get things right. If keyboard check, and then just for the moment, vk down equals true, then, and I will forego the curly braces for the moment here. We'll fix everything up in a little bit. If I press the down arrow key, then I want to do a move context solid. And I want to go down, and I want to go at some speed. I'll just say 5 at the moment. All of this is hard-coded. So what happened? Obviously, I press down. But, whoopsie, I meant to go down. So that was easy to understand. I meant to go 270, not 90. Duh, Brad. Okay, so there we go. I can go down, and then when I hit the wall, again, there's no collision detection here, or there's no collision event that is triggered because technically there's no collision as I press myself down. And then as you can imagine, for the moment, how about I just set this up for the other key presses, right? And right now everything's just, again, this is just step 1 in the process. Okay, right is 180 and left is 0. And again, you'll know right away if you go to do things, because I go up, up. I did it again. I didn't change this. Up is 90. Okay, so up, down, left, right. Oh, son of a gun. The right arrow key is 0. Oh my goodness. What a day already. Happy Saturday, everyone. A weekend for me. Hopefully you guys are having a nice time, whatever you're doing. So up, down, left, right. Finally, it's doing what I want it to do. But now the first thing maybe you notice, if I press any 2 keys at the same time, like I'll go diagonally, but one thing you're not thinking of, you're actually going 40% faster, square root of 2, 41.4% faster than moving at 5, because you're going 5 and 5, and if you do the trigonometric math, you do the figure out the hypotenuse of a triangle that has 2 sides of 5, you get 5 square root of 2. So this thing's already, it's like it's already a cheat. Why would I ever want to move horizontally or vertically when I can move diagonally at 40% faster? So you're like, okay, let's get rid of that right up front. And to do something like that, we got to write some more complicated code. And there are other ways to do this. I can use arrays and all sorts of stuff to set up different responses and all sorts of crazy things. But just something that's easy to understand is something that well, it's conceptually easy, but it's not necessarily easy the other ways here, else if. So I'm going to start doing this. I'll just show you guys what I'm talking about here. So let's just say, if I press the down arrow key, okay, and then I can check to see if I press left or right. And this is just to figure out which of the 8 different directions the character is supposed to be going. And so, it's like, okay, fair enough, right? So I can say, just to say my direction, and I'll use capital. I'll use capital. I'm not going to take over GameMaker here, and I'll say var equals -1. And this -1 is here in case I don't want to go left, right, up, or down at all. So then this variable will not be changed by anything here. So if I'm pressing down, think of the 8 different directions we can go, right? Maybe I could, if I'm pressing down, I could either go down, straight down, or I could go diagonally left or diagonally right. So I do have to write some code here to say, okay, if I move right, if I'm going down and I'm going right, then direction, I won't be doing this correctly here. Down and right is 315. Okay, and then you say else if, and you go, okay, else if I go left, well, that is 225. And if I don't do either one of them, I do 270, right? That's else. So there's 3 different ways from here that you could go. 270, 225, 270, 225, 270, 315 are the 3 different ways. I can borrow this and use this for up arrow also and say, okay, if I press up and to the right, I'm going 45. If I press up and to the left, I am going 135. Otherwise, I'm going 90. So those are 6 of the 8 different directions. And now you can just steal this, else if. And so instead of movement here, you can go direction. And I can say just pure right is, okay, let me do this right. Pure right is 0, and pure left is 180. Okay, oops, bring this back a little bit, bring these back. And I'm foregoing a lot of the curly braces just so you guys can see. I like putting curly braces in every case, almost all the time. But you can see now, okay, down, right, down, left, down, up, right, up, left, up. And then the only 2 that are left, because if I don't press down or I don't press up, well, I could just want to go right or left, so I have that ability. So now, right here, if my direction does not equal -1, then I will say, now I'll use my move context solid here. And I'll say direction, comma, say that's my speed, 5. Okay, so now, no matter which direction I go, of the 8 directions, the speed is a constant 5. So there's no more cheating on that and go, if I press 2, I'll get something else going. But now one thing you notice, and I'm going to have a whole nother video on this. If I try to go diagonally and I hit a wall, I can't move anymore. You're like, well, that's terrible. What kind of games nowadays especially have it so you hit a wall and you can't slide? So I'm going to create a function, a script called move slide solid, and I'll show you guys how to do that in a future video so that later on when you go try to do this, you'll do it, instead of doing a move context solid, we'll do a move slide solid, and the character will slide against the wall as if it's supposed to, because it's just one movement. You're just trying to do 45 degrees till you hit something, and well, how about I break that 45-degree movement into a horizontal and a vertical component, just like I was talking about earlier when it comes to the Pythagorean theorem and all that stuff, and then I don't have to worry about anything going on with that. But that covers pretty much the basics of just straight up movement for this character. And again, you just understand that the diagonalness will be fixed later on. Everything is good to go. So let's move on to other topics. So another thing that I want to show you guys how to do then is to set up so the rooms, maybe you've done this, maybe you haven't, so that the rooms, after all this hard work, I'm going to get rid of this over here. Get rid of this over here. And say, okay, what I want to do now is make this room twice as big. both ways. I'm not going to go crazy filling in, especially when with you guys watching and all that. Like, there's no reason to go crazy. I'm just going to do my best here. Fair enough. Fill in the holes just so that nobody decides to cheat on us here. I think that's all of them. I'm going to get rid of the grid and see. Oh, it's hard to read. But as you can tell then, but this is working, right? I have a larger room now, and there's my GameMaker has kind of ruined everything. So now let's use a camera. Let's use a viewport to set this thing up and follow the player around. And maybe in later videos I'll show you guys how to set up a few more bells and whistles, but this is, round one of this, so let's not worry too much. I'll explain at least one thing that I see when I do this kind of stuff. Okay, so I like to think of a viewport and camera, this whole thing like the cruise control on a car, that you actually, it's weird, right? You have to set the cruise control before you set the cruise control. There's like an on before an on, and it's the same kind of thing. I have to enable the viewports before I can enable a specific viewport. And if I just say enable viewports with nothing else, nothing gets drawn, because now I'm taking over for GameMaker and say, I know better than you what I want to do with when it comes to drawing to the screen or drawing to the window. And so now I'm coming back. Now you can see the white box here. That tells me that at least, there we go. Now I'm back to normal, but now the character, but again, the character does not get anything when it comes to the way the camera follows. So now so the room can be any size. This is where the camera properties and the viewport properties, this is where we actually go ahead and set up the properties for our window. It's weird, right? You would think that the room setting would have that since that's what we're used to, but that's not true. So I want to say camera properties, here's my 720p resolution, and I want to say the viewport and the camera in this case are going to be identical, because I want a 1-to-1 pixel basis for this thing. And then I want to set the object, at least for right now, say the player is the centered object. Keep the player centered. And for some reason, wrong. I did something while I was talking. Let's see, did I not? Oh, I thought maybe I unclicked it or something accidentally. You got to make sure you enable viewports and make viewport 0 visible. Okay, so here we go. Now we're back to here, and now this is the fun of GameMaker. You're like, okay, it's following me a little bit. It's like, it's tricky. But now, of course, who's going to want to play this game where you can't see in front of you? So that's where the idea of the following object is. And for this kind of thing, I like something 640, 360, half your width and half your height. That'll keep you centered as much as possible. But I don't like that exactly, so I'm going to take 50 pixels off each direction. So there's a little box in the middle where the character can move. Not visible here, but right now you're like this. I can move a little bit. See that? I can move a little bit before the camera follows me. So it's not every single pixel. I'm not always 100% centered. And this is the reason why I personally believe I should be writing my own code to handle cameras, because like if you get over here to the corner, you know there's nothing in the room, right? Because you've hit the corner, the camera doesn't pan and continue on. But wouldn't it be nice so that it would continue on? So it would be, you didn't know that you actually hit the corner of the game room that you have set up in the actual GameMaker system. Wouldn't you like to be able to make the user believe there might be something beyond there, even though as the developer there isn't? So in that case, like, there are ways to fix this up, and we'll deal with that later. But that's the basics of just using a simple camera system, simple viewport system to follow the character around. I think maybe I'll add a little more to this. And if you want the camera to pan versus follow directly, you can change this speed. This means make sure the camera is exactly following the player at all moments in time. So by doing this here, I've added a little bit of extra wiggle room before the object causes me to move around and causes the camera to follow with me. So let's see, I want to go in here real quick just so I can, because as we're walking, especially in these kind of spots, it's difficult at best to see if I'm actually moving, because if there's no background or anything, then there's nothing you can try to do. Okay, so let's see. Yep, this should make everything a lot better. Okay, there we go. Now, no matter where I go, there's at least some kind of square box that's on the screen, and I can see exactly what I'm trying to do. Alrighty, cool. Okay, now let's start up a discussion about setting up animations for our player. So I found a Humble Bundle, I don't know how long ago, and I bought the animation. So I'm using this player's animation here. You can see this is the player, I called it player down anim, player left anim, there it goes, player right anim, there it goes, and player up. So there's 4 animations going, and to say every one of these frames is humongous, there's no reason to have all this white space, and you will see this a lot, especially if you're working as your own artist and you're taking graphics from the internet, borrowing them or whatever it is you are doing. Nothing ever seems to come in the way, the shape or the form that you actually want to have that in your game. And so there's a lot of little details here. First thing I would do, I'm not gonna do it, because it's beside the point here, is to cut out all the extra blank space from all of these animations, because I have 40 sprites going, 10 per animation, and that's a lot of extra pixels. So there's a lot going on here that I would eliminate immediately. This thing is pretty big, right? I mean, it's considering the walls, I made everything 40 by 40. I mean, I might think of scaling the character down or whatnot, but I'm just going to go with what I have for now. And so now we actually have to go ahead and tinker with the collision masks with this, because let me see if I can, I don't know if this is true or not. Let me go into the player and let me just change this sprite. Let's just be the player up sprite, and let's just I don't know what it's going to look like. Let's see what happens. Okay, there he is. Oh, this doesn't look so bad, right? Boop. Okay, so right now, and I can't change the sprites, obviously, at the current moment, because everything is the entire, we're going to have to fix that, of course. Maybe I should make it down so it looks a little more, he's looking at you going, what are you making me do? Okay, so there you go. He's walking around. He can go diagonal. Oh, look at that. Isn't that kind of cool? So, but when it comes down to it, everything, like, you can get stuck in the walls. I don't know if I can per se, just because of the way this animation is specifically set up. But it's very possible that if you don't do what I'm going to show you exactly right, that things are not going to work out for you. Because as much as you'd like to think, oh, GameMaker has my best interest at heart, it is still I'm not saying it as an insult, just it's still a dumb machine that does its best, but it doesn't know every detail when it comes to these animations. So when it comes down to it, I need to make sure that the collision mask is identical for every one of these 4. So let's see, 99, 156, 94, 159. You can start to see that there's going to be issues moving this character around left, right, up, or down. First off, it's not going to look right because he's going to look like he's like teleporting a slight bit when you go from up to down or left to right. And also by teleporting, by doing that, there's no check or balance inside of GameMaker to go, oh, I'm now inside the wall. I shouldn't do that. And so it's possible that your move contact solid functionality is going to be blown out because just moving the sprite changes the bounding box and now you're stuck in a wall. There are plenty of other games that I have made and I probably will have in my video series that will show exactly what I'm talking about. Rotation is the worst when it comes to that, but this is also really bad when it comes to setting up all of these types. So let's see. 94, let's just take the smallest and the largest. Let's see, 94. 94. Just let's say 94. So everything, I'm going to have to do this manually. Rectangle, manual, and I'll say 94, 156, 159. 94, 159. Everything has to be exactly identical, and you can always tinker with it later. 94, 159, 94, 159. 94, 159. You have to manually. We're going to have 94, 159. We do not want anything precise here. Let me fix automatic manual. Oops, manual. And then top to bottom here, let's see. Let's fix this up right now so we can give the guy like a little 3/4 top-down view. This entire sprite does not need to be, because that's not where the character is if you're thinking about this from a 3/4 top-down perspective, because this is a 3/4 top-down view of this character. I wish I could. Can I get rid of that without ruining anything? I'm not gonna worry about it. But collision, there you go. You can see him. He's only about, what, maybe half the image? But I don't know, but what is half, right? So let's see. If he goes from 58 to 170, and let's just keep it to 40 by 40, right? Let's just why don't we go from 130, 131 at the top? What is that? How does that change things? There you go. So that is actually his hitbox right there. 94, 159, 94, 159. And then what did I have here? I had 131 and 170. Oh no, all that hard work went away. Hold on, I don't remember any numbers as I'm going. 94, 159. I should have written it down. There we go, and then 131, 170, 131, 170. 131, 170, 131, 170. I think I have everything working right. And now, by the default here, I should have a 3/4 top-down view. And so the character can actually, oops, kinda, right? So the character can go and look like he's in front of certain walls. And you're like, oh, that's not what I was anticipating. But this is part of the reason why I was saying to use the bottom, at least the bottom, maybe not left or right matters, but the bottom, because we're going to affect the draw settings here, because his drawing order completely is dependent on where the character is on the screen relative to every other object. And so coming down to it, if I have my wall object, it has it's 40 by 40. My wall sprite, let me just make sure about this, is bottom left. Okay, I have that going for me. In the create event, I only need to do this one time because walls never move. I can say depth is equal to the negative y value. And remember, negative in GameMaker is closer to your eye. And so that's why I'm choosing depth equals negative y here. And so when it comes down to it, I'm going to do the same thing for the player. And let's make sure, and we're going to have to fix up, let's do this. This is one thing we have to fix up. We have to make sure when it comes to the origin point, we're going to pick the lower left-hand corner. So we're going to pick, instead, we're going to manually change this because there's all that extra space. I'm going to say 94, and I'm going to say 170. Because it's custom, but it's bottom left for this character. So 94, 170 is the origin I want for this. And as long as you've done the numbers right and you've done everything properly, it'll always go to the lower left-hand corner. You probably can change it without typing it in, but I don't know. I'm not going to tinker with it. So there that goes. And then in the player object, in my step event, I can just say, on it, because the player is moving frame to frame, I guess I only need to do it if I move, is just to say depth is equal to my negative y value, or after I've moved. So now no matter where I am on the screen, this character will draw, and it'll always, and like, I'm not going to worry about being in where you can actually have it where you're behind the wall, but you can have it where you're in front of the wall. And now if I had move slide solid, the character could slide, and now you'll never have this character get stuck in a wall, because he'll always be, the move context solids, and the fact that my sprites are aligned and locked in and loaded, and they're never going to vary when it comes to their positioning in space, no matter what animation I choose. And I'm going to have to do that here. I'm going to have to set this up, like based on my direction, which animation do I want to show, right? I mean, because right now he's just facing down, and this is another, one of those things. How do we fix this up, right? You're like, oh, geez, Louise. So there are 8 different things that can occur here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And so we'll have to change this. I can set up an array. Let me do that. Let me just set it up like an instantaneous thing for you and show you how we can now use this to change instead of having to write a ton of if statements to determine which animation to draw, let's set up a quick and dirty kind of animation here, or an array here. Okay, so I've set up my code that handles now all the animations without having to do a whole ton of if statements, like if the direction is 0, do this, if it's 45, do that, and so forth and so on. So I set up an array of 8 different movements. So now you get to dictate which animation you want to show for each of the 8 different directions. And it gets a little tricky since I only have 4 directional movement when it comes to the sprites. If you have an 8-directional sprite, then oh my goodness, you're lucky. You can have all of them. But for me, I get to choose for the diagonals, do I show the up or the left, or do I show the right or the down? It depends on what I want to do. So let me just show it to you, then I'll explain the code a little bit more than what I've already got going. So there's my guy, and say there's my right, there's my left, there's my diagonal. And and again, because of the depth ordering and the way that I've made all the sprites, I can't get stuck in the wall. And it's very easy to. But there you go. Left, right, up, down, and all the diagonals are handled accordingly. And so now the character looks like he's going to move. He moves properly. And when I stop, instead of running in place, you'll see in a second here, I have code that stops his movement and puts him to basically the idle animation frame. So here we go here. So we have all this code to handle which of the 8 directions we want to go, 315, 225, and so forth and so on. And so you're like, well, how do I make that into an array? Well, I take that direction and I divide it by 45, because this will give me 0. 45 will give me 1, 92, and 3, and 4, and 5, and 6, and 7, which just happens to coincide with our array here and say 0, this is right, this is what do I want to do in diagonal, what do I want to do as straight up, what do I want to do diagonal up, what do I want to do, left and down, and so they're all here, and I chose it's up and down dominant. If you want to make it right and left dominant, just go ahead and change a couple of these. Change these to rights and lefts and just play around with that. And so this is to say animation 0 handles direction 0. Animation frame 1 handles 45, and so forth and so on. And so I do my move context solid like I did before. Here's my speed. I do my sprite index. I use this array and I say, hey, take my direction divided by 45 to bring me down to which of these things and pop it in as my sprite index. Set my depth settings because I've moved and maybe now I need to be drawn differently according to GameMaker. And then the speed. If you don't like the animation speed of the object, of the sprite, and I personally don't believe in going in here and changing this yourself, because you could. I believe in doing it in code, because if you change this here, it affects everywhere. Like if you have this animation used for 5 or 6 different objects and your artist comes in and modifies this, oh boy, you are in trouble, because what if you were doing custom things? I do not, as much as it's cool to have, I don't do it that way. I'm not saying it's bad, just saying I don't do it that way. So I changed my image speed to 0.9 to slow it down just slightly. And again, if you don't like it, I'm not a designer, I'm not whatever, like it looks okay to me. It looked a little fast a minute ago, but that's just my interpretation of it. And this looks a little better for what he's trying to do here. Okay, so that's what we do if the character moves, and if you don't push any of the buttons and you're like, oh, I'm not trying to move anywhere, well then my image index is 0, my image speed is 0, bring me back to the first animation with no speed, so he's just going to sit there and not do anything. So the animation animates while I'm pushing buttons, but it's not when I'm not. And that kind of covers the character movement that I was thinking of. And again, the camera follows and everything goes on. You're like, oh, this is pretty cool. And you can, of course, I don't have any nice wall objects. A lot of this is just getting graphics in and just being happy with the graphics that you have. Yeah, I cannot get, as much as the move context solid is ruining things. Oh, can I get in there? Can I get in there? I guess not. Like, oh goodness, thank goodness I can't get in that hole there. But you're going to have to work this out because because the character is big, right? I don't know, 40 by 40, I don't know how big the player is when it comes down to it. We're changing all those sprites around, The character is 65 pixels wide. And you can bring, if you want to, you can bring this in to be whatever it is you need to be. But again, that is a little beside the point. Everybody's graphic is going to be slightly different every time you do this, especially if you're pulling internet sprites out of thin air. If you're making your own, hopefully your artist follows your directions, Ben. But maybe not. So anyway, so that is how we go ahead and move characters around. And what's nice, again, by putting this down here, that the character will always be drawn correctly, because no matter where the character is on the screen, this Y positioning will be correct relationally to all the wall objects in the scene. Okay, so I want to do a little tidying up with our player object. I'm going to eliminate this player sprite now since we don't need it anymore. But the player object itself, if I go in here, like this direction stuff, okay, that's fair enough. And all this player, maybe, you know, this is okay. This maybe not. I would say I'm trying to hard code. I'm not trying to hard code anything. So maybe instead of making var movements, let me just borrow this stuff here. This is all the stuff that occurs on a frame-by-frame basis. And let me go over and just start setting up a create event for this thing, so I can take these and create these settings and make it so that the user can dictate and change what's going on here, or the designer anyway. So let me just go ahead, I'll make this easier to read here in a second. And I go over here and I go, okay, this is for designers can touch. And so there's that stuff. Definitely not the move context solid, but I would like to set up a walking speed is equal to 5. And I don't need to worry about this line of code. Nope, nothing in there. Nothing about the depth setting needs to be modified. But this image speed, I'll call it animation speed. And this allows you to go in without having to worry about anything inside the actual code. A designer just has to go in here and tinker with this stuff. So now I can go back into player, I can go back into the step event. And now, just to say here, just to make sure I do this right, because spelling is a big deal, I can say, okay, that's my walking speed, and I can say, okay, animation speed. And then I've refactored this. Nothing's changed. Like, my game will run exactly the same as it did before, and now I have more, my designer has better control over everything. Yep, nothing is, I'm not, just to show you, nothing has changed on my end. Okay, so let me just fix this up one more time. Oops. Okay, so that handles this, and you will want to do this more and more. I was asked an interview question like this. I was given a piece of paper by the designer, and he's like, tell me all the little hooks that the designer needs to get the job done. And it didn't look like much, but as you kept going, you're like, oh my goodness, unless there could be 20 or 30 different settings that a character or of any kind could have that the designer might want to tweak to make the game more fun, more challenging, less challenging, whatever it is the designer wants to tweak. And this is just which animations, because right now technically I don't even need to have an animation set up to this thing, but it makes sense to have one to start. And so player movement and walking speed, animation speed, that's all on you. Okay, so now next thing I want to do is I want to show you how to do trees. You can walk under the trees and have the trees have a little bit of an alpha gradient to them. And so I have a tree sprite. Let me get this into my program. I'm going to have 4 different tree objects. I'll just show you that right now. Okay, so I have 4 trees. I just found a sprite. I just looked on the internet and just said tree sprite or something like that. And I found this one. It looks so cute. Maybe it doesn't fit the graphic style, but I'm just finding whatever I can for right now. The 256 by 256. I'm looking for 4 frames, 2 per row. And because I want 4 different ones, because the same tree every time is going to look terrible, right? So at least these are 4 slightly different graphics for things. They have some alpha blending in there already. They're so cute. Okay, so then I go, yep, I want to do this. And so now I'm not going to animate this, but I have 4 different frames to choose from. And so now coming back to my sprite itself, let me see if we can see this. I want to middle center this. These aren't going to, if you really want to add something to make it so that you can get stuck in the tree, but I've noticed in games it's not fun, especially top-down games, like you don't know where that tree trunk is, and it just makes things more complicated. It's a 2D, you know, a 3D game, you could see where the tree trunks are. That's on you if you run right into one, but it's in a top-down or like in a three-quarter top-down view, it's not fair, I don't think, to add like a tree trunk to this. Okay, so I've middle centered this thing. Let me throw a couple trees. Let me create a tree object. And then you can see exactly where we are and what we need to do to fix this thing up. Let me set up a tree. Throw the tree sprite in here. And then throw a couple trees into the room here. Just say, oh, they're pretty big, right? So just... And just for, since there's some alpha blending, I'm not going to put tree on top of tree right now. Well, maybe now's the time to experiment to see what it looks like, because it's kind of the same thing as what happens if you put a pair of sunglasses in front of another pair of sunglasses. Like you double up the alpha blending and and the amount of light that comes through. But let's see. Watch your eyes. I don't know what this is going to look like. Oh my goodness. Now it looks like a poison gas cloud more than anything. But you can see that's obviously not what I want, right? I want this tree to be drawn on top of everything else because it's going to be higher than walls. Trees are taller, generally speaking. And I absolutely do not want this thing to animate. So let's go ahead and worry about that first. Okay, so create event. And they've changed the depth ordering on things. If you really wanted to, you could set up a tree. No, I don't want to go crazy on that about setting up a whole nother layer and things like that for just the trees. But if you want to, you can. But I'm going to say the depth is equal to -100, so it's higher than the walls and the players and everything. And the depth is -100. Actually, I'll make it -3000. I forgot that it's tied to the Y value, so I want to make sure that if I make a large room, even, or maybe 5,000. I don't think you're ever going to make a room larger than 5,000 by 5,000. You'll probably have multiple rooms of smaller sizes. So we'll make sure the trees are drawn on top of everything else. I want to make sure absolutely that the image speed is equal to 0. So let's try at least that. So there you go. So now there's my tree. And again, with some of the transparency there, you could see through part of the tree. I think that's kind of cool. Okay, so we're getting closer, and now you're hidden behind everything. But now a couple other things I want to do. I want to say image index is equal to irandom, and then I can say image number -1. And now what that does is you can see it chooses between the different ones, gives me a different animation frame for every tree, which is pretty cool, right? And it randomizes everything. And so the other thing I want to do then is image angle. Since I've centered this thing, centered, I can say, give me a random number on top of it. Give me one of the 4 random trees. And now randomize how much this thing is angled. And now, even with trees that are identical, you really wouldn't tell as much, right? Because they're just the way they are. They're rotated differently. And now I have tree objects that are in my game. I can walk around just like before. So now let's finish this up. Let's go into the tree. Let's just play with the let's see about the mask settings for the tree sprite. Masking, automatic rectangle. Let's bring this in just a little bit. Let's make it a little more manual. Manual rectangle, and you can see the bounds. So let's see, let's do 20. Let's see, okay, bring this in just a little bit. See that? 20, 20, and then right 230, 230. There you go. I mean, it's not going to be perfect by any means, but it makes it a little easier. And we're going to need this in a second here. We can't prove anything until we try it out. So in the tree, I'm going to take a step event. I'm going to take over here. And just for the moment, I'm going to say something like this. If place meeting, x, y, player, and I believe place meeting just gives me a bool true, false. Boolean true, false, which is what I want. Does it contact a player, yes or no? I have a pretty cool sourdough starter recipe right there. I just don't know where I found it from. I'm just trying to, where's my GameMaker? Here's my GameMaker. Anyway, so if there's a collision, then set the image alpha, and this is where you can tinker with this. What looks good, I'm just gonna say 0.25, else image alpha equals 1. And that's about, I mean, I'm gonna show you, oops, did I miss something? I didn't ruin anything there. Okay, so then I go, and then, oops, 0.25 is way, well, maybe it is, maybe it's not. With it being green and all that, it kind of, you still look like you're in like a poison cloud or something like that. But you can see that I can now see my character through there at least, and now you can see what happens when you have a tree on top of a tree. Like it's just kind of, the alpha blending kind of gets a little wonky there, but that's just because of the way it blends. And so 0.25, maybe not the best value, but I can call this low alpha value. And we can, again, this is on you guys to tinker. I'm going to go into the create event here and just say this is the only thing you guys as developers can tinker with. How about 0.4? I don't know, 0.5, something like that. It's not always linear. You would think but it's really not. And so I go over maybe 0.5. Whatever it is, right? You're not going to have an infinite number of trees, most likely. So that, and so I'm also going to set this up so instead of just going right to it, I can also have an alpha speed. How fast should this thing go from low to high or high to low? And I'll just use, for now, I'll just use 0, 0, 1, or 0, 0, 1. If it makes it easier for you to make that 0.50, go ahead. So alpha speed, and what I'll do here is set this up, and I'll use, this is the first time I'll use min and max functions and things like that. Because what I'm going to do here, if I get into here, collision, let's see through the tree. And so what I want to do is subtract off. So I want to say, okay, give me the larger value between the current image alpha and what happens if I subtract. Oops, and no, I'm sorry, image alpha minus, I did this wrong. Sorry. The low end minus, here, let me pull back here. I'm sorry, I forgot the two names here. Low alpha value and alpha speed. Okay, sorry about this. Okay, trying not to confuse, but sometimes it happens. So give me the maximum between the lowest value I can have and take my current alpha and subtract it by that speed. And I'm going to comment this out because I'll need this here for alpha 1 here in a second. So let's see what this does. Oops, get an error. What did I do wrong here? Oh, I don't have a parenthesis around here. And let me add some space here make that a little nicer. So now this should cap down for me. There you go. Look at how nice that is now, right? So now, and right now it just immediately kicks back out. So there is that. And this is just saying, as I subtract off, give me the larger number. So as I'm subtracting off, my 1 becomes 0.99. That's larger than 0.4 or 0.5 or whatever it is, so I'm going to use that value. But once I get down close to the alpha value, I can't get any lower than that because then that becomes the maximum of the two values. And so it's always going to show it there at least this 0.5. And on the other end, 1 is always the maximum. So maybe, well, I don't know, maybe not. So that's the low alpha value. What about the high alpha value? Maybe I don't want it to be, I do in this case, 1.00, but maybe I don't in other cases. So why not just, if we're going to go this far, why don't we just do it? Okay, so then the same thing goes here, but now on the other end, this is a minimum. Give me the minimum of the high alpha value and image alpha plus alpha speed. And I guess I don't need the curly brackets anymore. So let's see. Yep, give me this. And so now it just works. It clamps both ways. I probably could have used the, now that I'm thinking about it, I should have used the clamp function. But I didn't. So well. Look at that. Isn't that cool? For every tree now as you're going, it comes in and out, and you can see your character through there. And you can tinker to your heart's content for everything that you like to know, and it's completely configurable. You never have to look at this code ever again. You just have to come in here and just change these 3 values, and everything's going to work. And that's always the, especially on large projects. You're not going to remember. You don't remember the code. Like stuff I wrote yesterday? Nope. I know the high level of what I was trying to accomplish, but did I have to hack it to get it working? I have no idea. Okay, so I've got trees. I've got my player moving around. I got a camera follow. I mean, I got everything I want, right? So now the last thing I want to do for this video is show you guys how to set up an NPC and have it talk to you, I guess. I'm just going to keep it simple. If you get within a certain range of the character, a little something will come up, because that's what my students are going to be doing for their homework assignment. So I'm just going to tinker with this because it's always fun, even though anyone else going, this is a boring game. And like, I made this, it's fun. Look at that. Look at the trees come and go as you're walking through. And it's all tied, again, it's all tied to your bounding box, to the character, that not the giant bounding box of the player, but the bounding box that we modified the character to be, because that allows us to get like this in front of this. We're touching the tree, but we're also inside underneath the wall object. Okay, so I'm going to set up very basic movement for an NPC. Nothing special. I'm going to use the same sprite, and because it's just a tedious exercise to bring in if I wanted to have another animation for a different character type. So that's a little beyond what we've already shown how to do that once. I don't need to do that again. And I'm just going to create an object called NPC. And I'm going to give him the down sprite to start, like the other player. And I have my object. Make sure I put a couple of them in the room right now. Just a couple. Put them anywhere. Let's see, NPC. Put them close by so you can see him doing his stuff when they're, you can see them walking around. Whatever. Okay, so then we're just going to give them basic movements. Just set them up on a timer and just say, okay, on create, okay. I'm going to say, okay, give me a 1 frame timer. Alarm 0 is equal to -1. And then on an alarm 0, I'm just going to say choose a direction. Direction, lowercase direction for this guy equals choose 0, 90, 180, 270. Or if you want to, I don't want to make it too complicated. But if you really want to, you could just make it choose any direction at all. It doesn't have to be just up, down, left, right. But again, when you're the developer, you can pretty much do whatever the heck you want. I'm going to say my speed is equal to, actually, I'm going to choose, they're always going to be moving. I'm just in my head, I'm like, what do I want this character to do? The speed is going to be slow. I'm going to use capital speed because I'm going to use move contact solids. This is an alarm. So right here, speed is going to be equal to 1. I guess I don't need to, if I'm going to do it everywhere, I don't need to do it. I can just change the direction. I guess the create event is perfect for setting the speed, setting my alarm. And then here I'll say set my alarm to back to like 90. Every second and a half, every 90 game frames, we're going to come back and reset the alarm and choose another direction. And in a step event, all I have to do then is say move contact solid and say in the direction, up in my direction, lowercase d, and then my speed over whatever that is. I think this should do it. And now we don't have any animations per se yet. Well, there they go. They're doing all sorts. They're not doing it right. Hold on, let's see. Alarm direction equals choose. Alarm 0 equals 90. Step event, direction, speed. Speed is 1. Direction is choose. That was interesting. They all went diagonal. No, they're going to the right. Never mind. Never mind. but it would appear their alarms are never getting reset, or they're getting stuck in the wall, or I don't know what's happening. So let's see. I got my alarm 0. It should reboot that. Move direction. Again, the only thing I can think of, nope, it's lowercase d. I think I spelled everything right. So what did I do wrong? Well, anyway, coming back here in the alarm event, and I guess this is you could do the same kind of thing with the arrays if you want to, just to make it easy, and just say var directions. And I guess you could put this again into the create event if you really want to. The speed will be different. The directions will be different for which animation should I show, and this will be player right anim. Player up anim, player left anim, and player down anim. Directions, all right. And so I can play with that thing over here now in the alarm event and say that the sprite index is equal to my directions at this direction divided by 90 this time instead of 40, because it'll be 0, 1, 2, or 3. Let's see what happens. Let's see if at least if it changes directions here. They all go. Oh, they're not doing like Anyway, I'm gonna have to fix this up. I'll see what I'm doing wrong. Those of you probably know exactly what I did wrong. I'll have to figure it out. That's the fun of programming. What the frizz did I do wrong? And then we're done for the day, or almost done for the day. Oh, yes, exactly. Alarm 0 is supposed to be +1, not -1. I don't know what I was thinking and when I was talking and whatever. I'm not going to review the video. But the alarm, you need, the whole point of this was to say my alarm needs 1 frame. They just pause for 1 frame. And then they're going to go into the alarm event and then start over and choose a direction and go with it. So yeah, like I went in and I started tinkering with things and started, drawing out and just seeing what my variable states were. And I go, oh, that's what I'm doing wrong. It's never hitting that alarm because I am dumb. Okay, so here we go. So he's going down. Maybe because they're going slower, the animation speed doesn't work. But now you can kind of see. They go up. They go down. Come on. Go left, go right. Come on, guy. That's randomness for you. There you go. He's going there. And you can see. So maybe the animation speed doesn't, again, you can just tinker with this thing to your heart's content. You can say image speed equals, since it's going slower, maybe 0.3. I have no idea. Let's find out. Now they're going for a nice leisurely stroll around, right? Instead of what they're doing before. Whatever it is you think, mine goes at a different rate, right? And that was what I'm saying. Like, my animation speed is different because I'm going at different speeds. To change it just globally in the sprite, ooh, that could really hurt you depending on what you're trying to do. And so, now the NPCs, I don't want to be able to see the NPCs through the trees because, they're not me. But they're just like everybody else, that their depth order completely matters. So on a step-by-step basis, their depth is going to be equal to -y, just like ours was, because he was being drawn, they were being drawn incorrectly when it comes to the walls around them. Let me find here for this guy here. See, now he's always drawn in front like everybody else. Alrighty, so we have our NPC. Our final step then is just to add a little something here so that you can walk up to get a certain distance from him, and he puts up a little thought bubble or something. I'm not going to walk up to him and press a key today. I'm just going to have you walk up to him and trigger something. Okay, and to do something like that, well, I can set up a variable here called player in range. And I'll say right off the bat, it's false. So is the player in range for your thought bubble to come up? And I could say, okay, step event. And step event here. And I could say, I'm just going to tinker with this player in range value. And I could say, well, okay, var distance is equal to distance to point from me to player.x, player.y. And if you have more than one player, this will never work for you. So just understand that this will only go to one of the players. Well, we can fix this up later on if you need to. If the distance is less than, we'll call it trigger range. Text box trigger range. And I'll go back into the create event and set that up here. It's another one of those things. This stuff you don't tinker with, but this stuff you can. Text box trigger range is equal to, we'll say 30 pixels. I don't know if, no, we'll say 50 pixels. And again, of course, you're going to have to tinker with this and figure out what works for you and what doesn't. And say on a frame by frame basis, say, okay, if that's true, then player range is equal to true. You're in the range. Otherwise, you'll say right here, false. Start every frame and just prove me right. Prove that I can get in range. And so now, on a draw event, what I want to do is first, of course, draw self. And then, if player in range is equal to true, then I will draw some text. And I'll just, right now, I'll just say x, comma, y minus 50, comma, hey. Just something just to prove it's working, right? Okay, so here we go. There's the hey. Oop, this isn't, we'll have to fix that up a little bit. Y minus 150 maybe. But you saw the hey there. Hey. The 50 pixels definitely definitely because these things are so large. My range can be, I can jump my range up to 75 pixels or something like that. And now the sky is the limit for what you want to do in that situation where you're near the character. So just to say, you could set up like I call it a placard when it comes to different object types. Maybe I'll create that sprite now. Let's see, for the player, coming back to this idea, the player sprites, you have to watch out because remember X and Y is tied to this lower left-hand pixel. So maybe you should center this, keep it down, keep it low for sure, but maybe center it. And I'm not gonna worry about it here, but I'm gonna create this real quick. I'm gonna create a sprite, and I'm gonna call it the placard sprite. I'm going to go in, how big to make it? I'm just going to make it 150 wide by 40 high, I don't know. Go in, and I'm just going to draw, this is just, the text is going to go on top of this. That's all. I'm just to show you guys how to do something like this. Oops, yellow this thing out, make this a little bigger. Oopsie. Happened there. Why isn't this happening right? Oh, come on. No. There we go. Something like that. And then where should I center that thing? I don't know. But let's just tinker with it. Let's just play with this. I have my sprite. I don't have to actually set up an object for this. Have you ever done that before? In my draw event here, I'm drawing text and drawing self and drawing this and drawing that. This is where I can draw sprite, and I could call it my placard sprite. And I could say, give me image index 0. And this is where you have to tinker. This is just kind of trial and error unless you know the details by heart here. And I can say x minus y minus 155 or something like that. Let's see what happens. Let's see what first pass gets us. There it is. Doesn't look too bad, right? So then I can move this, I can move the placard over maybe 30 pixels or something like that. And that's as far as I wanted to go with this. And you can, again, the sky is the limit. It's up to you now inside of here how to draw, what to do. I'm just giving you the hook. There's your hook there. And there's my hey. And so, and then the final thing maybe, if I press a button, what should maybe do something? Because right now they all, this one says hey, that guy says hey. Oops, The only thing is the images or this placard's depth setting is tied to the object. It's tied to the NPC. So if it goes behind a tree, it goes behind a tree. That's just a little something that you'd have to play with. If you wanted to, you could create an object that follows around and then put that object at a different depth setting. But I'm not, again, there's a lot of little, it's gaming, right? There's hundreds of thousands of different things that you could think of that could go wrong, and even the simplest of things like this. So the last thing I wanted to show then is the trigger. Like if I wanted to set up a trigger point here, be like, if I'm within range, and I can say VK, we'll use the space bar. So if on top of this, if I'm in the draw event, and there's never a good place to really put this or do this, but it's like maybe a draw event is definitely not the right place. A step event here, something like that. Player in range is true. I could say something like, now if keyboard check pressed, and I can call it whatever that trigger button was, I can trigger some event. This is where I can call a function. This is where I can do something. How about just for the sake of showing you things, and then I can call it a day? This thing's about an hour long anyway, right? I can do game end. Is it game end? Game end function, yep. Game end, I can just end the game by doing, hey, be like, oh, by talking to this person, you have ended the universe. And so I can go over here, I'm pressing all sorts of keys, enter and all these things. Nope, 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 pressing enter. Even over here, I'm pressing spacebar. But I go over here, enter, enter, other things. I hit spacebar and the game ends because it hit this trigger point. And if you want to maybe room restart, whatever, or just trigger the discussion, trigger a text box, trigger more conversation. Again, that is way beyond the scope of this one lecture. But now you get the point here. You go, hey, hit spacebar, everything reboots, or whatever it is. Or in this case, if you don't want anything to happen, you don't even need to put this in. But this is a good place. The draw event should only be used for drawing things, and everything else should be used for the actual code itself. And so that pretty much handles everything you need for my homework assignment, or just to kind of get going and have like a basic RPG with basic room and basic NPC movement and just movement around the screen and whatnot. And I think it's pretty cool. So thanks for sticking with this video. Hope you learned a lot. As always, I love questions. swardb@cod.edu is a great way to get a hold of me, or you can always text me or message me here through YouTube, and I'll get back to you as soon as I see it and as soon as I can get you an answer for how to do things. Next video, I'm gonna do that move slide solid function, because it is still really annoying that our character gets stuck to the wall when they're trying to go diagonally, right? I mean, you should slide just slide, and he can't slide, and so we'll fix that up, and I'll show you how to do this and take over from GameMaker and create your own function that does basic work. GameMaker, create a move slide solid function. You have my backing on that. Well, anyway, thanks everybody. Have a great day. See you soon.